Once upon a time, in a peaceful village surrounded by golden fields and whispering forests, lived a humble farmer named Elias. He was known for his kind heart, hard-working hands, and his love for nature. Every morning, he woke up with the sun, tended to his crops, talked to his animals, and cared deeply for the land he called home. Far away, in a shining castle that overlooked the village, lived Princess Amara. She was curious and adventurous, unlike the other royals. While she was trained to become queen one day, she often dreamed of the world beyond the castle walls. The villagers whispered tales of her kindness. One breezy morning, Elias noticed something strange near the edge of the forest. A horse was galloping wildly, without a rider. Concerned, Elias followed its trail and soon found a young woman caught in a thorn bush. Her cloak was torn and her crown hidden beneath her hair. "Are you all right?" Elias asked, carefully helping her up. I think so. Thank you," she replied, brushing leaves from her dress. "My horse got spooked by a fox. I lost control." Elias didn't recognize her royal robes at first. "You're lucky you weren't hurt badly. What brings you so deep into the forest alone?" The young woman hesitated, then smiled. "Just exploring. I needed some fresh air." Though he didn't know who she really was, Elias offered her water and helped her back to the village. The townspeople were surprised to see him walking with such a graceful stranger. As they walked, she asked him about farming, about the village life, and about how people lived outside the palace. Elias answered with passion, unaware that his stories fascinated her more than anything she had learned inside the castle. At the village square, Amara finally revealed the truth. "My name is Amara," she said softly. "I'm the princess of this land." Elias's eyes widened. "The princess? I had no idea. Please forgive me if I spoke too freely." She laughed. "No need for that. You've treated me with more kindness and honesty than most people do. Thank you." That day marked the beginning of an unexpected friendship. A farmer and a princess, two people from different worlds, brought together by chance, or perhaps fate. But little did they know, their meeting would change the future of the entire kingdom. A few days had passed since Elias, the kind-hearted farmer, had rescued Princess Amara in the forest. Word of their unusual encounter spread through the village like wildfire, though many dismissed it as just another tale. Meanwhile, Amara returned to the castle, but something inside her had changed. She couldn't stop thinking about Elias, the way he spoke with honesty, the way he respected the land, and how he never treated her like royalty, but like a real person. She had found something in him she had never known before: sincerity and peace. Back at the castle, her father, King Aldrin, was growing concerned. "You've been distracted lately, Amara. You must stay focused. Soon you'll be meeting the noble families, choosing a future husband." Amara sighed. "Father, must I choose someone I barely know?" "That's the way of royalty," the king replied. "Our choices shape the kingdom, not just our hearts." That night, Amara stood on her balcony, gazing at the village lights. She knew the world outside her walls had so much more to offer than gowns and rules. And so, the next morning, disguised in simpler clothes, she snuck out once again. Elias was surprised, but happy to see her. "Back again, princess?" he asked with a smile. "Please," she laughed, "just Amara here." They spent the day together, feeding animals, walking through the wheat fields, and even planting new seeds. Amara's eyes lit up as she learned how the crops grew with care and time. For Elias, it was strange but comforting to have someone so different enjoy his simple life. As the sun dipped below the hills, they sat beneath a large oak tree. "Do you ever wish for more?" Amara asked quietly. Elias thought for a moment. "I used to, but then I realized peace is worth more than power. And being true to yourself is the real freedom." His words struck her deeply. She had grown up with privilege, yet felt trapped by expectations. Here, with Elias, she felt seen, not as a princess, but as a person. Just then, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of hooves. Royal guards appeared at the edge of the field, calling Amara's name. "They're looking for me," she whispered. "I have to go." Elias stood, concern in his eyes. "Will you be all right?" "I think so," she said, stepping back. "Thank you for today. For everything." She ran off to meet the guards, her heart racing, not with fear, but with the feeling of something new, something real. As Elias watched her disappear into the distance, he didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew this was just the beginning of a story neither of them had planned. Princess Amara is a central character struggling with her royal duties versus her personal desires. She spends her time in the castle feeling caged and longing to be with Elias, a farmer she secretly admires. The king, her father, is concerned about her mingling with commoners and reminds her of her obligations as a future queen. Amara is caught between her affection for Elias and her fear of losing her identity. Elias, a simple farmer, senses Amara's absence in his daily life. His intuition tells him that their connection is profound, yet seemingly impossible. When a letter from Amara arrives, it revives his hope and sets the stage for a secret meeting. The exchange signals a pivotal moment for both characters as they explore the possibilities of freedom and choice. During their clandestine meeting, Amara reveals that an engagement with an unknown prince is being arranged by her father. Her admission of fear and doubt leads to a dialogue about courage and change. Elias encourages her to rethink her boundaries and consider a path driven by her own choices. This moment emphasizes the themes of bravery and self-determination in the face of societal expectations. Their secret meeting doesn't go unnoticed. Unbeknownst to them, spies have been reporting their encounters to the king. The realization that they're being watched brings tension to their story. Amara is summoned by her father, whose reaction to her disobedience is swift and strict. The king's command underscores the conflict between personal desires and royal duty. As Amara faces confinement and impending engagement, both she and Elias realize they're about to face even greater challenges. Their story is now a battle for autonomy against the backdrop of looming scandal. It's a tale of love against all odds, highlighting their resilience and determination to chart their own course despite the restrictions imposed upon them. The castle that once felt like home now felt like a prison. Princess Amara stood by her window, staring out at the distant hills where freedom lived, where Elias lived. Since her father's harsh order, she hadn't stepped outside the stone walls. Guards stood at every exit. Her days were filled with silence, her nights with dreams of wildflowers and wheat fields. But even in isolation, Amara's spirit refused to break. In the garden behind the palace, hidden by tall hedges and old stone walls, there was a place she once called her sanctuary. A secret garden she had loved as a child. Overgrown and forgotten, it had become her quiet place again. No guards watched there. No ears listened. It was hers. One afternoon, while walking the garden paths, Amara found something unexpected, a small crack in the garden wall. It wasn't large enough for a person to walk through, but it showed her the world beyond. The wind, the grass, the life she missed. Her heart sparked with an idea. That evening, in the village, Elias received another letter, this time delivered by a young stable boy. The message read, "The garden behind the castle. 3 nights from now. I'll be waiting." Elias's heart raced. He knew the risks. The king would never allow this. But love, once awakened, doesn't vanish, it grows. And Elias wasn't ready to let her go. On the 3rd night, under a blanket of stars, Elias crept through the forest and made his way toward the castle garden. The old wall was hidden behind vines and moss, but the crack was there. And on the other side, a lantern flickered. "Elias," Amara whispered through the gap. "You came." "I told you, didn't I?" he smiled. "Whenever you call, I'll be there." They spoke through the wall, about dreams, about fear, about what might come next. "I can't stay locked here forever," she said, "but I can't escape alone." Elias nodded. "Then you won't have to." They agreed on a plan, quiet, careful, and risky. Elias would gather help from the village, friends he trusted, those loyal to the old ways of freedom and kindness. Amara would prepare on her end, watching guard schedules, learning passageways, gathering supplies. What they were planning wasn't just rebellion, it was hope. But even as they plotted, danger stirred inside the castle. One of the queen's handmaids had overheard Amara humming in the garden, humming a tune not sung inside the palace walls. A tune of the fields and forests. Suspicion grew, and while Amara returned to her chambers that night with hope in her heart, the shadows in the castle were moving faster than she could see. The road ahead was growing darker, but the light between the farmer and the princess still burned bright. The moon rose high over the castle, casting silver light on the sleeping kingdom. But in the shadows, two hearts were wide awake, Princess Amara and Elias. Their secret meetings through the garden wall had sparked more than love. They had sparked a plan. For days, Amara studied every corridor, every guard's route, every secret passage whispered about in childhood tales. And Elias, wise in the ways of the land, spoke to trusted villagers, old friends, loyal hearts, people who remembered the time before the crown had grown cold and distant. The plan was dangerous. Help the princess escape the castle, hide in the village, and from there, decide her fate with her own hands, not the king's. But someone was watching. Lady Merla, the queen's handmaid, had grown suspicious of Amara's garden walks and secretive smiles. One evening, she followed silently through the vines, catching only whispers between stone and leaves. It was enough. She went straight to the king. "Your daughter conspires with a farmer," she said coldly. "She plans to run. The walls cannot hold her heart anymore." King Aldrin was furious, but beneath the rage was fear. He knew the people loved Amara. If she defied him publicly, it could shake the entire kingdom. "We must stop her," he ordered, quietly, "before the people find out." Back in the garden, unaware of the danger closing in, Amara passed Elias a small cloth pouch through the wall. Inside, a map of the castle's servant tunnels and an old key. "This opens the eastern gate," she whispered. "Meet me 2 nights from now, at midnight." Elias nodded. "We'll leave together." But fate had other plans. That night, the guards doubled at every door. The garden was no longer empty. And the next morning, when Amara went to the library, 2 royal guards waited. "Princess Amara," one said, "by order of the king, you are to remain in your chambers. Effective immediately." She was trapped. Again. In the village, Elias waited for word. When none came, he feared the worst. But he didn't give up. With the villagers' help, he began preparing a new plan, one bolder than before. No longer was this about sneaking away. It was about standing up. Word began to spread among the villagers. The princess wants freedom. The king wants silence. Which side are you on? Elias looked to the stars that night and whispered to the wind, "Hold on, Amara. We're coming." And in the castle tower, Amara stared into the darkness, clutching the pouch Elias once held, whispering back, "I believe in you." The storm was coming, and with it, the spark of rebellion would soon ignite into something far greater. The kingdom seemed quiet on the surface, but beneath that calm, something powerful was stirring. In her chamber high in the castle tower, Princess Amara stood by the window, her hand pressed to the cold glass. She could no longer visit the garden, no longer feel the earth beneath her feet or the wind through her hair. But in her heart, she still felt Elias, his courage, his words, and his promise. "Hold on. We're coming." Outside the palace walls, Elias was preparing. The villagers, farmers, bakers, craftsmen, and even a few former soldiers had gathered in secret. They met at night in the old mill, where Elias stood before them, not as a leader, but as a friend. "We are not here to fight a war," he said. "We are here to free someone we love, a princess who loves her people, not the throne. She deserves a choice, just like all of us." There was no shouting, no weapons raised, only silent nods and determined eyes. Their plan was simple: cause a distraction at the castle gates during the Harvest Festival, just 2 days away, when the castle opened briefly to honor tradition. While the nobles paraded and feasted, the villagers would sneak Elias through the crowd to the eastern gate. Amara would be waiting, if she could escape her guards. But inside the castle, the king had grown suspicious. He increased the guards and issued a silent command: "Watch everyone, especially her." Lady Merla, ever loyal to the crown, crept into Amara's room one night under the pretense of kindness. "You miss your garden, don't you?" she asked with a knowing smile. Amara remained silent. "You've grown bold, child, but boldness burns those who fly too close to the sun." Still, Amara said nothing, but her eyes said everything. Merla left with a smirk, but Amara had learned something too. She had no time left. That night, she found the secret passage behind the fireplace, a tunnel she'd read about in an old book. It led through the castle's old foundation and out to the eastern wall. She memorized every step. The escape would only work once. The day of the Harvest Festival arrived. Laughter echoed through the air. Music filled the village. The castle gates opened, and the crowd swelled. Among them, cloaked in a tattered shawl, was Elias. The villagers moved like shadows, creating distractions. A spooked horse here, spilled fruit there. Guards rushed to control the chaos. And in that moment, Elias slipped inside. Deep beneath the castle, Amara waited by the tunnel exit, heart pounding. Then a sound, a torchlight, footsteps. "Elias," she whispered. "It's me," he answered, breathless. "It's time." She ran to him without hesitation. But just as they reached the final stone archway, a voice echoed behind them. "Stop right there." They froze. The king's guards had followed. The escape was no longer a plan, it was a race. And now, the true test of courage had begun. The air was thick with tension as Princess Amara and Elias stood frozen in the narrow tunnel beneath the castle. Behind them, the sound of armored boots clashing against stone echoed louder and louder. "Run," Elias whispered urgently. Amara didn't hesitate. With torches in hand, they sprinted through the damp, winding passageway, their shadows dancing along the ancient stone walls. Behind them, the royal guards gave chase, shouting commands that bounced through the dark corridors like war drums. Amara's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the thrill of freedom finally within reach. As they neared the tunnel's end, Elias noticed a wooden support beam trembling above them. A thought flashed through his mind. "Go ahead," he told Amara, handing her the torch. "Take the last turn. The gate is just beyond." "What about you?" she asked, eyes wide. "I'll be right behind you, but I need to slow them down." Before she could argue, Elias pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. "Trust me." Then he turned back and kicked the wooden beam with all his strength. The tunnel trembled. Stones fell. Dust filled the air. The pathway behind him collapsed, blocking the guards. He turned and ran after Amara. Outside, the eastern gate creaked open. 2 villagers in disguise, posing as castle workers, helped Amara climb out. She gasped at the cool night air. Freedom. Moments later, Elias emerged, coughing from dust, just as the gate began to shut again. But behind them, they heard the horns. The king had been alerted. From the castle towers, torches lit up like fireflies in the dark. The royal guard poured into the streets, shouting orders. But the villagers were ready. They scattered in every direction, leading the soldiers on wild chases. Elias and Amara ducked into the forest, where a horse waited, tied to an old tree. "We ride now," Elias said, helping her up. They galloped through the trees, past streams and moonlit hills, until the castle lights were no longer visible. Hours later, they reached the edge of the kingdom, a ridge that overlooked a vast valley neither had ever crossed. "We made it," Amara whispered, barely believing it. "For now," Elias replied. "But this isn't the end." Amara turned to him. "No, it's the beginning." Back at the castle, King Aldrin stood in the great hall, surrounded by silence. His daughter had escaped. His control was broken. And among the people, a new word was rising: hope. The farmer and the princess were gone, but their story had just begun to inspire others. And deep in the valley below, as dawn began to break, Amara and Elias rode on, toward a new land and a future they would write together. The sun rose over the distant valley, casting a golden glow on the new world awaiting Elias and Amara. For the first time in their lives, they were free, no walls, no guards, no rules but their own. They found shelter in a peaceful village beyond the border, where the people welcomed them with kindness, not questions. Amara introduced herself not as a princess, but as a traveler. She wore simple clothes and worked alongside the villagers, helping in the fields, learning the ways of ordinary life. Elias, once a humble farmer, was now her equal partner. Together, they built a small cottage near the edge of the woods. It wasn't a palace, but to them, it felt like a kingdom. Yet peace came with its own restlessness. Amara couldn't forget the people she left behind, those still bound by fear, tradition, and silence. Nor could Elias ignore the courage rising in the hearts of villagers back home. And soon, word began to spread. Across the kingdom, stories were whispered like legends: the princess who fled the crown, the farmer who stood with her, a love that defied power. In the capital, something was changing. The king, once feared and revered, now faced growing unrest. His soldiers struggled to keep order. His advisors whispered of rebellion. The people, inspired by the princess's escape, had begun to speak openly. They wanted change. One evening, an old friend arrived at Elias and Amara's cottage, Jorin, the blacksmith's son. "You must return," Jorin said. "The kingdom needs you. The people remember you, Amara. They trust you." Amara looked at Elias, unsure. "Do you think we're ready?" Elias smiled. "We've always been ready. We just needed to believe it." And so, under the rising moon, they rode back, not as fugitives, but as beacons of hope. Their return was not met with swords, but cheers. In the town square, Amara stood before the crowd. She didn't speak of royalty or revenge. She spoke of freedom, love, and the right of every person to choose their own path. "I am no longer a princess in a tower," she declared. "I am one of you, and together, we will shape a new tomorrow." Faced with the will of the people, King Aldrin had no choice but to step down. In his place, a council of citizens, farmers, scholars, craftsmen, and healers was formed to lead with wisdom and unity. The kingdom was reborn. And in that new world, Elias and Amara lived not as rulers above the people, but as voices among them, planting seeds of kindness, justice, and love. Their tale, once a secret, became a legend passed down through generations. A story of two souls who dared to believe in more: the farmer, the princess, and the kingdom they changed forever.